Yes, Donald Trump is getting arrested later, but we start today with economic news. We'll get to the Trump stuff. We'll have time to discuss it tomorrow. Let's start with economic news. Inflation has now dropped to its lowest point in 2 years. And as you all know, I don't like to play politics with these economic indicators. I don't play politics with debt and deficit. We have to look at it for what it is. And if you do that, you will then have no choice but to laugh at the way that Fox News covered this. Yahoo Finance reports inflation, consumer prices in May rose at slowest annual rate since April of 2021. That's in fact more than 2 years. It's 25, almost 26 months. The Consumer Price Index revealed headline inflation rose 0.1% over the last month and 4% over the prior year in May, a slowdown from April's 0.4% month over month increase and 4.9% annual gain. Both measures roughly in line with economists' forecasts. So we have a chart that you can see. And of course, you see this massive inflation spike that started right when COVID started, essentially. It has now come down to levels that are still higher than what the U.S. has seen, but are equivalent to what we saw in 2011, lower than what we saw during the recession in 2008, similar to numbers we had in 2006, similar to numbers in 2001, lower than numbers in 91. So you start to see that we are now in an inflation range that is a little bit higher than what we have historically said is the target, but are very reasonable inflation numbers. Is this a surprise? It is not. I don't have any special predictive ability. But anybody paying attention to the trends, we saw an increase in the rate of inflation. We saw a decrease in the increase of that rate. And then the next thing you would expect is an actual decrease. My thought was that by the end of this summer, we would be somewhere in the 4 to 5 range. We may even, once we get June's numbers in July or July's numbers in August, we may actually see inflation down into the high 3s, which is even lower than I thought it might be, or it might stay level right around this 4%. Important to understand a couple of different things, and I always explain these things. Number one, when people see the number 4%, very often they think prices went up 4% in May. They did not. 4% is the inflation over the last 12 months. And what happens when you get a new month's worth of data is that in that year indicator, you drop that 13-month ago number and you add the latest one. So let me give you an example. The number we got last month in May told us what was inflation from April 22 to April 23. Now that we have the May numbers, we update the 12-month indicator, and we now know what was inflation from May 22 to May 23. It's a trailing 12-month indicator. Number two, many people aren't aware that based on the standards that we have for our economies and how we think about the economy, the goal is roughly 2 to 3% inflation. Now, you might say, David, why? Why would we want inflation? And it's important to understand this. You can critique it by saying this is not sustainable long-term as an economy because we can't have indefinite growth, which I would engage with you on. But the reason that a little bit of inflation is considered good is if you have too much inflation, as we understand, life becomes unaffordable for people. It can cause spending to stop because people can't afford things, and it can cause a recession. That's if we have too much inflation. You might say, well, but wouldn't deflation be good then? Prices going down sounds good. People can afford things. If you start seeing deflation where things get cheaper, it also causes people not to spend and businesses not to invest. Why would that be? If you expect that things will be cheaper in the future, either as an individual consumer thinking about buying a car, or as a business thinking about doing an expansion, building a new warehouse, or whatever the case may be, if you think it will be cheaper in the future, you would wait. That waiting is a decline in economic activity, which then trickles down and can lead to layoffs. And okay, so that's what we call a deflationary spiral. That's why a little bit of inflation is considered good. That little bit of inflation is what encourages people to buy now rather than later, but they can still afford right now and often a little bit of inflation is in parallel with wage growth. So that's like the general economic view. Now, how did Fox News react to this news? Well, they think there may be too many jobs. They are pulling the labor shortage line. This is Maria Bartiromo and Republican Congressman Buddy Carter just this morning.
Well, we will also hear from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen today. Representative Earl Buddy Carter, talk to us about what you're expecting there, because the Treasury Secretary, when we first started seeing this spike in inflation, says it was transitory. What are your thoughts on how she'll explain where we're going from here?
Well, I'm sure she'll make it out to be as good as she can. But at the same time, we are far from out of trouble here. Yes, I agree. The Fed may pause this month and may not raise interest rates, but that doesn't mean they're not going to raise them back in July. We've still got some serious problems in our economy.
Right.
The labor shortage. Last night, I had dinner with a group of engineers, and they were telling me, we need help. We need engineers. One company said they had 1,700 employees. They'd hire 200 today if they could find them. We've still got high interest rates. In the lobby this morning, I was talking to a young lady who said, you know, I wanted to buy a new car, but I just can't afford it right now. It's so high. Inflation, interest rates, those are the type of things that we've still got to work on in this economy. And, you know, Janet Yellen will paint a pretty picture. Yeah.
All right. These people really are pathetic. The argument he's making is there are so many businesses desperate to hire people that it is a terrible economy. The economy must be doing terribly because so many businesses are saying, hey, let's hire because we have demand for our products and services. Now, I'll be very clear with you. Let's talk about labor shortage. A labor shortage happens when demand for workers in a particular industry, for example, exceeds the supply of workers available with the skills required, willing to work at the wage rate that is being offered. Labor shortages can be a sign of a good economy, or they can be troubling. Labor shortages can have positive or negative effects on an economy, depending on the type of labor shortage, the duration, the severity. And so a labor shortage, even if that's what they are calling it, is not necessarily a bad thing for the economy. It might just signal really strong demand for goods and services. It might create incentives to innovate and to increase efficiency. And it might mean that employers need to offer higher wages. They love talking about the market and supply and demand. And what a labor shortage may signal, particularly when you're at full employment, essentially, is that businesses might need to pay a little bit more. So just saying labor shortage isn't an argument, and it is certainly not an argument when people like Maria Bartiromo and what was this guy's name, Buddy Carter, are the ones making that argument. Understand that there is no economic indicator right now that signals a weak economy. There is just none, and we're going to continue covering that. If you've been thinking about getting a new mattress, Helix Sleep is where I would start. I've been sleeping on Helix mattresses for years now. I recommend Helix to everyone, which is why I wanted them as a sponsor. If you don't want to take my word for it, Helix has been awarded #1 mattress by both GQ and Wired magazine. And one of the things that makes Helix unique is their sleep quiz. I didn't really know what kind of mattress would be best for me. But you do this short sleep quiz, you answer questions about your body type and your preferences, what position you like to sleep in, and Helix will match you with the perfect mattress for you, so you know you're actually getting something tailored to your needs instead of going in blind like most people do. I got my Helix mattress designed to stay cool at night since I hate getting hot while I sleep. Shipping is always free. You get 100 nights to decide whether you like it. My audience gets a huge 20% discount off of all orders, plus 2 free pillows. Go to helixsleep.com/Pacman. The link is in the description.